Lesson 9, Svadhyaya, the fourth Niyama. First of all, try to see the wonderful systematic approach that yoga has here. Every yama that we learned covers the previous one. For example, if you look at the fifth yama, non-desire, you see that desire, the violation of the fifth yama, leads to the violation of all four previous ones. Now we continue with the niyamas, and you see that with Svadhyaya, the fourth niyama, and the next one that we learn after the break, you see that all of this is coming together. Svadhyaya is self-study. Now, self-study implies that you have to do something. You have to study yourself. And there are also many teachers that actually tell you, you must study yourself. And then you scratch your head and you say, how am I going to do that? It doesn't work like that. Self-study is the natural result of what you have done until now. Very important in that framework of what you have done until now is that you practice. Because the practice of yoga leads to a change in consciousness. That first stage of yoga is called Kriya Yoga. Let me use another color. Now, I have to explain, because 2 weeks from now we will learn 7 Kriya exercises. But that is different from this. Kriya comes from the stem word kr. That is a Sanskrit stem word that also karma derives from. Karma comes from kr. Kriya comes from kr. What does kr mean? There's nothing mysterious about this word. There's nothing mysterious about karma, there's nothing mysterious about kriya. Kr means do. Hada in Korean. Kriya means doing, but doing in a particular way. Karma means dealing with the results of doing. But kr means do, and it depends on how you do, what the results, the outcome will be. So Kriya Yoga is the yoga of doing. It is the basic stage of yoga, the beginning stage of yoga. But that means you have to do it in a particular way. That is Raja Yoga, that is traditional yoga. All the other yogas, most of them, the modern yoga classes, the flow, power, Ashtanga, movement yoga classes with music and a teacher that constantly talks, a wonderful exercise as it may be, that is not Kriya Yoga. Because it doesn't lead to the desired effect, which is enhanced or awakening and then continually widening consciousness. That is why we stick to traditional yoga, standing still in silence, in asana, and meditating. That is Kriya Yoga, and it leads to the next stage. Snana. Snana is knowledge. Not knowledge from a book, knowledge from the crown chakra because you have started doing yoga correctly, kriya, your consciousness is awakening, you develop insights you never had before. That is Jnana. Jnana is the result of kriya. If you do yoga correctly, it leads to new and increasing insights and wisdom. When people develop new insights, they develop new curiosity. Now, what is the first thing that you are interested in when you start asking yourself questions? Yourself. It's very natural. The first thing you want to know more about is yourself. Who am I? Why am I here? Why am I part of this family? Why do I experience suffering, pain? What is my purpose in this life? What am I? It all seems so empty and so useless. Why am I here? What am I supposed to do to give my life any sense, any purpose? Everybody who practices yoga in the right way will end up having these questions. That is self-study. That is Svadhyaya. So it is a very natural result. It's not something that you sit down behind your desk and say, today I'm going to study myself. Studying yourself is intuition. Feeling what you feel. Hearing what you hear. Hearing what you think. Starting to think. Because everybody has many thoughts. But few people know what they are actually thinking. You develop consciousness and sensitivity that leads to consciousness about what you're thinking. And that leads you to connect with yourself. Now, many people will say, self, I know who I am. Here I am. Yes, but since we are born, we are told and taught and indoctrinated to be something based on our nationality, culture, education, the family in which you are born, the neighborhood or the city or the country in which you are born. All these things make you identify and say, this is who I am. I am a male from the Netherlands, and more particularly from Amsterdam. People from Amsterdam are very proud because it's the capital. People from Rotterdam are peasants. People from The Hague, Utrecht, they are peasants, we say in Amsterdam. But The Hague, Rotterdam, Utrecht, they are cities too, and not that much smaller than Amsterdam. But we have a pride. We are from Amsterdam. That is not who I am, really. But before yoga, that was who I thought I was. You understand? It's an identification. We identify with our environment, with our the input from the media, education, what your parents teach you growing up. And you believe that that is who you are. And yoga says, no, that's not you. Look inside your heart and you will find who you really are. How do you do that? Start first and foremost practicing yoga. That leads to an awakening of consciousness, and very naturally you will come into contact with your true self. You see, in the second paragraph that I wrote there, practicing Svadhyaya or self-study is only possible if you understand and practice Saucha, tapas, and santosha, purity, austerity, and contentment. Purity, because yoga leads to a purification, literally. Because you become conscious, you start to feel resistance with all the identifications. You start to say, yeah, I'm from Amsterdam, but people from Rotterdam, Utrecht and The Hague, they're not peasants, they are people too, just like me. Maybe they think that we are peasants in Amsterdam. You start to think sensibly, commonsensically. You start to look at things in a more balanced way, not in a biased way, in a judgmental way. Purity also demands from us that we are honest with ourselves, about ourselves, that we don't walk around with lies and delusions about how great we are, while actually, there are 7 billion people in this world who all think they are great. We are all just tiny little people on this earth, in this universe. That you just be honest with yourself. Purity also means getting rid, one by one, of all those fake identifications. Identifications that I just mentioned are all gathered through environmental influence, unknowingly, unconsciously. We start identifying with everything that we experience in life. Education, and the time that we live in, the media has a huge influence on how we identify ourselves. Tapas, austerity, is needed to come to self-study, because that's what you do when you do Kriya Yoga. Austerity, the practice of yoga correctly, subjecting yourself to all these exercises, the discipline to sit on your cushion to meditate, eat healthy food, exercise regularly, that leads to a change in energy that you need to fuel the crown chakra, to fuel consciousness. Without that energy, an awakening of consciousness just doesn't take place. But tapas, austerity, also means humble in the way that you look at yourself. Get rid of illusion, get rid of arrogance, get rid of thinking that you're different or special, or because in the end we're all made of the same skin and bones and muscle. In the end we're all when we bleed the same blood. When we hurt, we feel the same pain. Nobody is better or more special than the other. Tapas, austerity, also includes being humble, being austere about your self-image. In a realistic way, of course. That does not mean that you must diminish yourself or your self-worth. Because just like the opposite, everybody is worthy of being who and what they are. And then santosha, contentment, is also very important when you do self-study. And I'm smiling and laughing because contentment is very difficult for most people. Even people who studied yoga, people who've done this course 2 or 3 times, we have them throughout the years. They still have difficulty with contentment. What does it mean? Well, you practice self-study, you start discovering yourself, you will find many things that you don't like about yourself. And then you have to say, hey, but there are many good things too. Positive thinking and just acceptance of whatever it is that you discover about yourself in an objective way, not becoming emotional about, the things that you discover. Very important in this process is ego. It is because of ego that we find it very difficult to accept who we truly are, who we really are. Because it is ego that leads to the emotion that you feel bad when you discover something that you don't like about yourself. That's because of ego. It is because of ego that you identify It is because of ego that you identify with being from Seoul, or from Amsterdam, or from Busan, or wherever it is that you come from. There are... Watch the news. I don't know if you watch the news a lot. I watch the news all the time. That's just my thing. That helps me to observe people, human nature, behavior. I try to feel people. I'm not even always listening to what they say, but I try to feel their intention, their truthfulness or lying. And a very big issue these days is, of course, the war in Ukraine. And when I hear Russian people talking about their right to not only invade Ukraine, but they also want to actually invade other countries in Eastern Europe, the Baltic states, the former Soviet Union. If you hear them talking about that, it's all ego. A rational human being would say, how can you think that you have a right to kill so many hundreds of thousands of people, to invade other people's country, democratic country, to destroy people's freedom? How can you be so arrogant to think that you have a right to do that? It's because of ego. So ego, you have to understand, is a huge obstacle in our functioning, me and you included. And so it is very important that over time, during this course at least, you learn to understand what ego really is. And I will talk about it many times. Because ego is a word that is often used in the media, in society, but there are few people who really understand how it works. But when I say, with pride, I'm from Amsterdam, and all those Rotterdam people are peasants, that is pure ego. Because it's emotion. Ego is emotion. If I say to you something bad, or I say something bad about your family, or I say something bad about your country, you get angry. Even if I say something that is true, you will get angry. Ego. It is because of ego that you become emotional, so you get angry, even though I am right. So if I tell this Russian person who just said that they have every right to invade Ukraine and kill people and destroy the whole country, basically, the cities and the infrastructure, if I criticize the Russian person, he will get angry at me, even though I'm right, because of ego. When people complain about Dutch people, I smile. And sometimes I even add some other complaint to that, because I know how it works. But that's not how most people function. Normally, if you would complain to a Dutch person about their Dutch culture, they would get angry. Just like a Korean person would get angry if you criticize or complain about their country or culture or, habits and what have you. That is ego. Ego is a thought loaded with ego results in emotion. So every emotion starts with a thought that combines with ego. Because of ego, you identify with something. I identify with being Dutch. To counter my ego, I make jokes about being Dutch. I'm just a stupid cheesehead from the Netherlands, I will say. Or I'm bald and I have a crooked nose. What do you mean? It's not important. There are many men who wear wigs because they are scared to death that they are bald. I don't care that I'm bald. It doesn't diminish me. It doesn't make me ugly. It's just who I am. That is contentment. My hair does not define who I am. And if people are judgmental about that, that's not my problem. That is their shortcoming. It's their problem. I don't have to please everybody putting a wig on my head so that people are not disturbed by my baldness. See? Understand a little bit how ego works? And still it's very difficult. Ego is constantly triggered. In family situations, in all communications. That's just a human characteristic. If you can understand what it means, how it works, and learn to control it, it will completely change your life. It will completely change how you deal with other people, and it will completely change, it will reduce considerably the number of conflicts that you have, and it will reduce considerably the number of times that you are upset about something or angry about something, because it's all caused by ego. We will come back to ego soon enough, probably in the next lecture already. Also very important about ego is that many yoga teachers mysteriously say, ego must die. Is that possible? No. Ego cannot die. Ego is the reason why we are here. Ego is the driving force. So ego cannot die. You cannot get rid of ego. You cannot cut it out. What you can do is to become aware of it, to understand how it works, and then by doing effort, by making mistakes, by trial and error, learning to control it. And you do that next time when you find yourself in a situation that somebody does or says something that upsets you or causes any form of emotion, that you take a deep breath, take a step back, and just rationalize what just happened. And then say, it's not important. I will deal with this. It's not important. If you fail, you will get into a situation. As a yogi, that is totally normal. Because life is very dynamic. Nothing is perfect. You find yourself in a situation that you know that would have been better to be avoided. Then you just say, aha, today I learned a little bit deeper how it works. And that I'm also not perfect. But next time I will try again. And based on this experience, next time I will be a little bit better at trying to control it. The difference with you and other people is that you are conscious. When something happens, you undergo consciously what is happening, and that is where self-study comes into play. You analyze things, you consciously understand what is happening and why it is happening. You connect the dots, you put the pieces of the puzzle together, and that allows to constant evolution, constant growth and development. You will mature like no other people in your environment are maturing as a result of this process. Because you are doing everything from now on more consciously than you did before or than other people do in your surroundings. Meditation is, of course, of enormous benefit because it is in the silence of your meditation that you hear your subconscious thought processes. But it is not only meditation, it starts in asana already, because you're standing still. It's very meditative in itself. People who practice only asana without actual meditation, they have the same benefits. It may be a little bit slower in their development, but they develop in the same way that people develop who are meditating. So at least when you practice regularly, and if you have the luxury of time, if you're not too busy with family care or work, full-time jobs are just horrible, basically making it almost impossible to have a regular practice. But if you can, at least do your practice correctly. And if you have the luxury of time, add a meditation to that. The next page starts with yoga opens the cosmic memory. Now that sounds very mysterious also, but I will give you a very simple example of this that you maybe can relate to in your own personal situation. I'm from the Netherlands. You probably know that the Netherlands, most of the Netherlands is under the sea level. So the Dutch people throughout history have always struggled with water. I am Dutch. I am from the country that throughout the centuries have struggled with water. Now one day I was on a vacation in southern France, a country that is above sea level and has no such struggles with water as the Netherlands has had. But we were on the beach in Argelès-sur-Mer, beautiful place close to the Spanish border. And from inland, there was a stream of water that ended up in the sea. So it cuts through the beach. When it is raining, that stream is pretty big. But it wasn't raining, so it was just a small stream, maybe 15, 20 centimeters wide. And it was meandering like water naturally does to end up into the sea. So my brother and I, just very naturally, without thinking about it, we started building dikes. We started canalizing the stream. Just like children playing with sand, except we were adults. We were in our mid or late 20s. We were just canalizing the stream. And there was a French ajoshi with a pipe in his mouth, and he was standing there with his hand behind his back, and he was observing us for like 10 minutes or so. He just stood there looking at us, and at some point he said, "Vous êtes Hollandais?" which is French meaning, "You must be Dutch." He made the connection. He understood what was going on there. Our genes, it is in our genes to try to, when we see water, we need to control it because it is a threat. We have a deeply ingrained fear of water because throughout the centuries, so many people have died because of it. I do it in the park too. Here in Yoido, when it rains, the water wants to go towards the river, but there are many obstacles because of the grass, because of the dirt, because of the sand that is being transported by the water and then obstructs the discharge of the water into the gutter. And nobody touches it. But I cannot control myself. I have to clear the way so that the water can discharge into the river. Now that I know, I just enjoy it and I smile. But I have to do it. I cannot pass by without not doing it and not feel any concern. That's just in my belly. That is opening the cosmic memory. And I'm sure, I don't know because I've never asked Korean people, but I think if you connect more with yourself, you will discover something similar. Something that is very typical to people living in this geographical area. And you will also recognize that around the world, people have their own very typical cosmic memory, or karma, you can also call it. That is why what is happening in Ukraine, the war caused by the Russian people is happening. It's also the reason why China, for example, wants to be in control of everything now that they have become bigger and wealthier. That's in their genes. Because in the past they have felt humiliated, or they have felt they were treated wrong by other foreign powers. They have this deep, ingrained genetic need to revenge. And it is, you will see throughout the next years and decades, you will see how that will play out. But it can lead to a war. And it is leading to many conflicts already. Not so much with Korea, but a lot with the countries around the South China Sea. Japan, the Philippines, Indonesia, not so much. Vietnam, Cambodia, etc., Malaysia. That's all related to this. And it has to play out. You cannot just say stop it, because that energy is there. That characteristic is there. It has to play out. That's just how it works. The very important on page 2, the second paragraph, is about mental self-study means to follow your own path in life. You know, in the Netherlands, we say people who are different, we say, just act normal. You're already crazy enough. In Korea, you have this game at the Munbangu, with the hammer. Every time that the head pops up, you smash the head. That is representing the process of oppressing people who are different. In the Netherlands, we also say, because we are Dutch, of course, we have lots of tandi, because our country is flat, no mountains, very fertile, so a lot of grass. We say if one strain of grass sticks out, it has to be chopped off. A person who stands out will be beheaded. That is a Dutch mentality, but Korean mentality too. This game where you smash the head that sticks out, most people don't realize it, but that is beheading everybody that sticks out. So, as a child, you grow up learning to not express yourself, to not be different than all your other contemporaries, other people. Just behave, just act like everybody else does. And it is oppressing yourself, your true self. So it is very important, and we learned this a little bit when we talked about truthfulness, although I didn't emphasize it that much. But it is very important in the process of our formation, our development as yogis, that we more and more start following our feeling, that we start following our own path in life. That is truthfulness, and it's also purity. Because as long as we keep doing things that we don't feel are really us, we keep blocking our energy. And in the long term, it makes us unhappy and it makes us sick. In the long term, also physically sick. So we have to develop a mentality where we more and more try to be ourselves based on what we feel, and that we become less concerned about what other people think about that. If other people tell you to act normal, you just have to learn to ignore that. Because it is essential for us in our development that we start listening to our heart. That we start living according to our heart's content. When you are a child, if you're lucky, your parents will stimulate that and they will give you the freedom to do that. But most parents don't. They demand that you do this and that, and they demand that you behave in certain ways. But as an adult, you now have a chance to change that. That is liberation. That is truly what liberation means. Getting rid of all the conditioning and indoctrination and starting to live in accordance with your feelings, your heart's content. Now, in the beginning, that will not be so easy because your mind is conditioned for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years to think in a certain way and to judge in a certain way. But because you become more sensitive and conscious, you will start to have conflict. And in the beginning, maybe your mind will win, but in the end, your heart will win. Another obstacle that we have in this sense is that we live, both Korea and the Netherlands, you're not allowed to be emotional. Because emotional people are said to be unstable. But emotion is energy. And we will come back to this when we talk about the chakras. Especially the chakra that is related to the self, Svadhyaya chakra, which is related to this subject, of course. Emotion is energy. If you oppress energy, you die. Maybe not physically, your spirit dies. So emotion indeed is unstable. But instead of oppressing it, we need to learn to canalize it, because that energy is too valuable to oppress. So do not be afraid to feel, just because throughout your upbringing, throughout your life, people have told you not to be emotional. That does not mean that when you're angry that you just should shout and hurt other people. That's not what this means. Because that leads to other complications and negative effects that will harm you too. But it's about feeling. Following your heart starts with distinguishing what you really feel. Your mind will tell you something else, but what do you feel? And how do you know that it is right? You know that when you are enthusiastic about something. You know that when something makes you feel happy. It doesn't mean that you're always right. Sometimes you can be wrong. But when something makes you very enthusiastic, you follow it. You follow up on it. And if it proves to be wrong, you learn a wise lesson from the experience. You know a little bit more about yourself and your heart's content, and you go to the next stage in your life. This will happen with work, maybe. This will happen with relationships. And on a smaller, less influential level, maybe with the interests and hobbies that we have. Let me put something on the board that I found one day. Before I do that, I have to finish this actually. Because the third step is karma. Sorry for the... Kriya is the first stage of yoga. The next stage is developing insight and wisdom, which also leads to self-knowledge. Karma is the highest stage of yoga. In that stage, you understand your past, all your traumas, you understand your heart's content, and you have kind of purified or cleaned up your past. So things that happened in the past that cause pain, trauma, abuse, for example, or failure, or things that can really make people's life miserable, it doesn't affect you anymore. It still exists in your memory, but it doesn't touch you that much anymore. That's karma yoga. But the next step is, of course, after you have dealt with the past, is that you are able not only to see the future, your destiny, but also to create it in the way that you choose. Not because people's destiny is created by circumstances. You have no control over that, even though you think you might have. But as a yogi, karma yoga, in this stage, you're able to determine your own destiny. Yes?
How does Bhakti Yoga fall into?
Bhakti yoga is the yoga of compassion. We will talk about that when we discuss the heart chakra. But like this is not a form of yoga. Although when you read books, there are books that present Kriya Yoga and Jnana Yoga and Karma Yoga. But rather than being forms of yoga, they are developmental stages. Bhakti Yoga is another developmental stage that happens already in the beginning of your practice. Because you become more sensitive, you start to care about things that you didn't care about before. And that is bhakti. We will come back to that when we talk about the heart chakra. So I had to finish this to make it complete. But let's go back to where we were. What we have here is following the heart. And following the heart starts with purpose. Purpose in life. What is the purpose of life? How do you find your purpose in life? How do you follow your heart? How do you find purpose in life? Let me draw this on the board, I hope. I'm not really a good artist, but I'm doing my best. Yeah. 100 years from now, you can sell this for millions of dollars. So, purpose. How do you follow your heart? You find something that really attracts you. You love it. Remember Yubin, the girl whose father forced her to be a sports star, which she hated, and I'm pretty sure that she never became a sports star. But she loved going to school. If she's still alive, which I sometimes worry, but if she's still alive, she might be a teacher now. She really loved going to school. That made her energy flow. That made her really enthusiastic. You love it. Passion on this side. Mission. You feel passion about something. And then it becomes your mission. A very simple example of this is what happened with me and Pada and Babi. I was in a stage that I didn't know exactly anymore what to do with my life. I'd taken care of my dog for 15 years, teaching yoga in the meantime, and the last weeks were very hard, but it gave me purpose. That purpose was gone when she died. And I kept going, doing my things, walking in the park and teaching my yoga classes. But I missed something. I lacked purpose. I lacked passion. Then this dog showed up in the park. We looked each other in the eyes. And it became my purpose to help him. You love it means that you feel strongly attracted to something. You feel passion. And you feel a mission. I would wake up in the morning again knowing that I have something important to do. It's not about making money. That is something that it will become clear. When you do something that you love, you do it with your whole heart. There are expressions, wholeheartedly. You do it with your whole heart. If you don't, you do it half-heartedly. When you do things half-heartedly, what happens? The result is not good. Half-hearted. But when you do something that you really feel interest in, really feel passionate about, what happens? You become a specialist by default. Because whenever you are engaging with the thing that you love, you do it with your full attention, with your full consciousness. So you become really good at it. You become great. You become great at it. Example, you like food. You like French food. So, since you were a child, you already experimented in the kitchen. And when you were old enough, maybe after completing formal education, not related to what you really love, you decide to go to an institute where you learn French cuisine. It starts as a hobby. You love what you do, you become really good at it. One day you say, I hate my job, that really doesn't make me happy. I'm gonna start a French restaurant. So you start a restaurant, and you start the restaurant not to make money in the first place. You start the restaurant because you love food. And you want to make people happy with delicious French food. So you open your restaurant, people visit, and they feel your energy. You really love food. And they taste that you put your heart into the food. That the food is just delicious, delectable. And you treat customers in a very friendly way, patiently. Now what happens? You have become really great at cooking French food. What happens? People come back. Not only that, they will tell family and friends, hey, you know what, yesterday I went to this restaurant, so nice. And the people there are so nice. And the food is so good. You should try. The reality is that many people who run a restaurant Their motivation is not because of passion. It's not because they love it. It's because they need to make money one way or another. Now, when you go to a restaurant like that, you recognize that. You enter, they are not so friendly. They don't guide you to your table and show you the menu. They're just waiting there, and they let you find your way to a table of your choice, and you have to find the menu on the table somewhere. And then you say, hey, I want to order. Okay, then they come. They're not very friendly particularly. They take down your order and the food is presented, and if it's busy, they want to rush you. They want you to quickly eat and just leave so other people can also eat. So you really don't feel good about that. Chances are you will not come back. And also chances are you will not tell anybody about this restaurant or even warn people not to go there. You understand where this is going? A mission, for me, this is yoga. I became a specialist in yoga because of my passion. But Pada and Babi are on this side. A mission to rescue them. The world needs it. For me, on a very small scale, I rescued 2 dogs and gave them stability, love, good food, happiness. But there are people who follow their heart and they work for Doctors Without Borders or UNICEF or any of those NGOs that try to make this world a better place. You follow your heart. Instead of going to the office like your parents told you to do or your teachers taught you to do, you follow your heart and you end up maybe on the other side of the world, in the jungle or in the desert or in the North Pole, and you find yourself doing something that you passionately want to do because you know that it makes a difference. Here, when you become really good at something, it becomes your profession. Yoga teacher, restaurateur, cook, chef. Here, it becomes a vocation. That is what it's called. It's kind of a profession too, but the vocation is something is of a little bit a higher order, because it's something that you just feel that you must do, following up on your passion and your sense of purpose. And now the most important part comes, of course, for most people, because we live in a commercial world where nothing can be done without money. You get paid for it. And the restaurant that was started out of love for food, 20 years later still exists and is still profitable. But you know, if you look at the statistics, many restaurants close within 2 years after opening. Statistically, most restaurants. Why? Because their motivation is not correct, not pure. Because they started the restaurant business not because they love food and they love to please people, make people happy with delicious, great food. No, it was all start just because of money. So sooner or later you have no customers anymore. So it's scary to follow your heart. It is. It's easier to follow your head and just follow the money. But as you can see, following your head and following the money often leads to failure, and you have to start all over again. Following your heart is scary because in the beginning you just don't know where it is going. When I came to Korea, I came here with a suitcase and some money in my pocket, and I didn't even know where I was going to sleep. I slept in a yokwan for 2 weeks before I had a room. And I didn't know if I would still be here after 1 year or after 2 years, or so scary. But if you follow your heart, you're not scared. You feel like you are in paradise, in heaven, even when you're suffering. Remember what we talked about with the practice of austerity. When you follow your heart, you can endure anything. And even be happy in very difficult circumstances. I had a huge culture shock when I came to Korea. If I look back, I understand it. At that time, it was not important. Because I was really happy, I was doing what I really loved to do. I was following my heart, my passion. And many people think that's foolish. In the Netherlands, people would just say, family, friend. My family is pretty tolerant, but friends would say, what the hell are you going to do, man? You're going to give up your house, your job and everything and just leave this country and go into a future that you don't know anything about. And most people function like that. Why? Because of fear. Yogis have no fear. You have fear, but you have hope and you have courage in the crown chakra. It's a quality most people just don't possess. So it's scary, but you can handle it. And you feel good even though things are not easy. And you see the logic, you see the process, you see what you are doing. It's not easy, but it's going somewhere. And it's going somewhere where you want to be. You don't want to be in that stuffy job 5-6 days a week from 8 to 6. Exhausting yourself and doing something that you hate. You want to be somewhere. You want to do something that really makes you feel alive. It sounds strange, but this is yoga because it's about energy. If you continue to do what you not like to do, what you maybe even hate to do, you kill your most precious asset, which is the energy responsible for functioning in the crown chakra. A higher level of yoga really entails following your heart. But don't say this to a child. If you tell a child to follow their heart, they will eat hamburgers all day, pizza, they will watch TV all day and play computer games and social media. So children do not have the maturity yet to decide what is good for them. But for adults who have basically spiritually died because of the horrible society demands of society, follow your heart and you will feel alive again. You will be reborn again, literally. Make sense? Oh, I wrote in the side line also the word eccentric. Do you know what eccentric means? An eccentric person? I think in Korea it's kwecha. I'm not sure. There must be a nuance there. But kwecha. But what is eccentric? When we use the word in English and in Dutch, it has a negative tone. We don't use it in a positive way to describe people. Because Eccentric people are different, and we judge them harshly. But what does it actually really mean to be eccentric? That is, who do we call eccentric? That is people who do things differently than others. It is people who do things in very particular ways. They have their routines, they have their quirky habits. So we think about that in a negative way because it's different from the norm. From our point of view, however, eccentric people, they are different because they follow their heart. They refuse to do things that like other people do because they think it doesn't make sense. They follow their heart. They have their own opinion. So eccentric people are not a negative thing. You will become eccentric too. Because yogis do become eccentric. Why? Because you follow your heart. Because you have your own opinion and you do not let other people change your mind just because they say so. If something feels right to you, you will not change your mind because everybody else thinks differently. Maybe in the past you did, you will not do that anymore because it doesn't feel right. It's a matter of purity, shaucha, where we learned that purity means to be consistent. And consistency means also that you don't just change your mind just because other people have another opinion. If you think you are right until proven wrong. And when proven wrong, you don't feel bad, you have no regret. You followed your heart and you followed your conviction. But now comes a day that something happens that gives you new insight. And you just go to the next level of development instead of just feeling remorse, which is ego, feeling sorry for yourself for having been a failure, which is ego. No, it's not important. You did what you needed to do when it was required. Now comes the day that your insight changes and you just move on with your life. Questions? Let's have a short break.